Hello everybody, this is Mr. McKeever, and today we're going to talk about a period in European history where conflict and war kind of dictating everything that takes place. And this period is in the mid-17th century, and we kind of characterize it with the biggest conflict going on, the 30 Years' War. So starting in the 1500s and eventually into the 1600s, we have a Europe that's divided by religious turmoil and everything else. We've talked about the French Wars of Religion. We've talked about the situation in England a bit. Well, the 30 Years' War is going to be the final war of religion in Europe. And it's going to embroil most of the European powers, even countries that to this point we hadn't really even talked of about it in any real scenario. The majority of the fighting itself is going to take place in the Holy Roman Empire. This is going to be right in the middle of those Habsburg dynasties, and it's really going to be characteristic and important that the fighting takes place there instead of other places. So, let's talk about the conflict itself. It is going to be caused due to a variety of different reasons. There's no one singular cause to the 30 Years' War. It's not like World War One, which still didn't really have a singular cause either. But either way, it's going to be caused by a series of different disagreements on how things should be run, and also just disunity throughout Europe. The first of which is going to be religious problems. The Protestant Reformation, as we've talked about before, left particularly the Holy Roman Empire divided between Catholics and Protestants. At first, it was just Catholics and Lutherans, and then eventually it becomes Catholic, Lutherans, and Calvinists, with our various small offshoots of people like Spiritualists and Anabaptists as well. Well, the Peace of Augsburg was supposed to help solve a lot of those problems, but it never really took into consideration the whole Calvinist movement. Well, when the Calvinist movement became the predominant movement in Protestantism, we have a significant problem because no nation of Europe is really going to adopt Calvinism. Now we'll have the Swiss city-states that will be Calvin, but for the most part, even they are relatively small. So we have a situation in the Holy Roman Empire, 300 small principalities, all of which are kind of, toying around with this whole religion concept. Well, in order to make sure that Protestantism itself wasn't moved on by the other Catholics or kind of trotted over, those Protestant nations within the Holy Roman Empire are going to create something called the Protestant Union. And this was to guarantee that their rights would not be infringed upon by Catholic monarchs in other parts of Europe trying to rid themselves of the Protestant movement. Unintentionally, though, they inspired the Catholics to do the same thing and unite together in something called the Catholic League. So we'll have two opposing sides in Europe here that are quickly kind of, running towards a very contentious reality. The Catholic League and the Protestant Union do not get along, and actually their goals are very much designed to counteract and go against each other. Well, this is part of our story. Politically, we also have an issue with the Holy Roman Emperor. Ferdinand II really wants to reunite his empire under Catholicism. Remember, this is the same family of Charles V and Philip II. They are very strong, devout Catholics, and the notion of having Protestantism within their empire is really upsetting for them. And Ferdinand's goal is to reunite them under that Catholicism because it also allows him to centralize the empire. He has better control of his empire if it's all within one religion. The small European states in there, they have latched on to this whole idea of having control over religion and trying to push this more to having control over all aspects of life. And well, clearly the Holy Roman Empire doesn't want that. Well, this isn't going to just walk away, though. The small principalities and territories aren't just going to give up the control that they have gained in the Peace of Oxford through Charles V. And then lastly, we also have some international stuff coming into this as well. A major player in European history is coming to the scene. His name is Cardinal Richelieu of France. We're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about him in the next couple days as well, too. But his sole goal in life is to make France a dominant power in Europe. And he viewed his most direct threat to that power as the Holy Roman Empire, and particularly the Habsburg family. Because to him, even though the Habsburg Empire was divided among Spain and the Holy Roman Empire, France happened to sit right in between of both Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. So if they ever decided that they wanted to team up against France, France would struggle in trying to fight off a war on both sides. So he is going to look to do what he can, despite being a Catholic cardinal, to help the Protestants gain control and, keep the Habsburg dynasty weak throughout the continent of Europe. So he's actually going to ally with various different nations, nations who we have not really interacted with much, people like the Swedish and the Danes, in order to protect Protestantism. Clearly against the designs of the papacy, clearly against the designs of the other Catholic monarchs of Europe. But he doesn't care about that. And this is really important later on. So what does the actual conflict look like itself? Well, it's not a straight 30 years of nonstop fighting. In fact, we have different phases of the war in different parts of the war with different players involved. The first phase is the Bohemian phase. Then we have a Danish phase, a Swedish phase, and a French phase. Now, it's important to remember that during these phases, we'll have some people that'll move into the conflict and some people that'll move out. But these are the different areas that we kind of associate with the 30 Years' War. Let's start with the Bohemian phase. Bohemian phase itself is going to begin when Ferdinand is going to attempt to revoke all the religious freedoms granted by Charles V. When he does this, the Protestant leaders in the Holy Roman Empire are going to be a little upset, particularly in the area of Bohemia, which is probably the most pronounced area of the Holy Roman Empire. Inside of the nation and kingdom of Bohemia is the city of Prague, which even today, Prague is one of the most influential and important cities in all of Europe. So the Protestant leaders are going to go to Ferdinand's people and actually throw them out the window of the Senate building that they're in. This is called the Defenestration of Prague. Literally, defenestration is a word for the throwing out of a window of these officials. Luckily for them, they land in piles of manure and actually don't die, but the situation devolves very quickly from there. Fighting will almost immediately break out. Ferdinand is going to take this as a direct insult to his throne and will start marching armies towards Prague. The people of Bohemia will turn to one of their own Protestant leaders, a guy by the name of Frederick V, and they were going to begin duking it out. The fighting over religious freedoms in the 30 Years' War will break out very quickly in the land of Bohemia. Unfortunately for the Protestants, Ferdinand dominates the fighting, and Frederick is actually forced to flee to Scandinavia in hopes of getting away. And because of this, it's going to seem very quickly that the Holy Roman Empire is going to turn back to Catholicism. And this is where we see our first break in the action. And we get to the second phase of the 30 Years' War, and we introduce the Danish stage. The Danes, seeing how quickly the Bohemians are defeated and how Frederick is forced to leave, are like, hey, we're going to get involved because in this land of Scandinavia, we're seeing Calvinism grow at an extraordinary rate, and they are very interested in making sure that Protestantism isn't eradicated on the continent itself. So along with the help of the Dutch and the English, the Danish king is going to wage war on the Holy Roman Empire, and unfortunately for him, he is going to get utterly beaten up. The British and the Dutch only kind of somewhat give support to the Danes in this stage of the conflict, and the Danes are utterly destroyed. And in fact, what will actually happen is Ferdinand will issue something called the Edict of Restitution, saying that any land that was taken by a Protestant nation or Protestant people that originally belonged to the church must be returned to the church. And since the Danes have lost significant chunks of Protestant territory in the Holy Roman Empire, because of this, we see huge chunks of territory handed back to the church. And this is going to be something that the Pope is adoring. He's loving every second of this, but the other Protestant leaders are really, really paranoid. So what we're actually going to see is another response to this. Due to the failure of the Danes, we're going to see the introduction in round 3 of the Swedes. The Swedish phase is where everything begins to turn. Up to this point, the Catholics in the Holy Roman Empire have kind of dominated the 30 Years' War. Well, now with the introduction of the Swedes, we introduce the single most important and skilled tactician of this entire age of European history, a guy by the name of Gustavus Adolphus. Gustavus Adolphus is the Swedish king, and he is as well versed in military tactics as anyone on the continent, and he's extraordinarily clever in trying to manipulate small groups of forces to defeat much larger ones. So when he goes into battle, he will go on a winning streak that is pretty much unprecedented. Like, he does not lose over the Swedish phase of the 30 Years' War. And because of this, he is going to guarantee that the Holy Roman Empire never unites under a single religion, never unites under Ferdinand II's rule, and actually he's going to dramatically change the eventual political landscape of Europe because of this. Now, typically, this would be that point of the story where I say, well, it's officially done. Gustavus Adolphus is kind of end the 30 Years' War, and the Holy Roman Empire is just going to stay broken. Well, if you paid attention, there are 4 stages to this conflict. The 4th stage comes with the death of Gustavus Adolphus. When he dies, this is where we see the French introduce the story. Cardinal Richelieu sees an opportunity. He does not believe in the Protestant cause. He 100% believes in destroying the Habsburg dynasty as much as humanly possible. So he will join the sides of his perpetual enemies, the British, along with the Swedes and the Dutch, and they will wreak havoc in the Holy Roman Empire. They don't just confront armies, they don't attack soldiers. They will do everything they can to destroy all the major parts of Germany. They will destroy crops, wipe out livestock, wipe out the ability to wage war by wiping out the food source. This is slightly done to, skew the conflict one way, and it's also significantly done to guarantee that the Holy Roman Empire never becomes a threat to France. So, we're only feeding some long-term lingering frustrations between the French and the German people. Well, the Holy Roman Empire is going to be destroyed because of this. It's a huge travesty for them, and Cardinal Richelieu gets exactly what he wants. The Holy Roman Empire will stay fractured. At the end of the conflict, we have this thing called the Peace of Westphalia. All the 300 states of the Holy Roman Empire remain 300 independent states. There is no one single empire controlled by a single person. Each ruler is allowed to make its own decisions about religion, again going back to those religious motivations that kind of started the conflict. This is also the official independence of the Dutch nation. We had talked about this a long time ago, how there was a civil war between the Spanish and the Dutch, and how the Dutch eventually break away. The legal recognition of their breaking away comes with the Peace of Westphalia. And there's also some small territorial changes, particularly when it comes to the borders of France, but Cardinal Richelieu wasn't looking for that. He was looking to guarantee that the Holy Roman Empire stays broken. And this is going to create a consequence throughout all of Europe here. The Peace of Westphalia is going to be an extraordinarily momentous occasion in European history. Germany is destroyed because of this. Because of the destruction of this, the Holy Roman Empire takes a significant backseat to other European powers at this point in time. Spain is also kind of reeling at the moment due to their conflicts in the New World and this whole inflation thing that you kind of talked about before. And our principal powers are going to become the French and the British, in particularly France. And this is exactly what Cardinal Richelieu wanted. His goal was to set the stage for the rise of a new European monarch. We're going to spend a ton of time next week talking about this guy, but this guy becomes the prototype example of the perfect autocratic monarch. His name is Louis XIV of the Bourbon dynasty, and he will revolutionize how European nations run their governments from here even until the present day. And this is all made due to the fact that the Holy Roman Empire is no longer a threat. On a side note, we're also going to see the birth of a new dynasty in Germany itself, a group called the Hohenzollerns. Without a united Holy Roman Empire to control things, these Hohenzollerns are going to become major European players as well. And they will become the new power in Europe that is eventually going to lead to the rise of a united German state. And with that, you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys next week.